Do you want to use a sword, but don't want all the cleaning and upkeep that comes with it? Do you want all the weaknesses of being melee while having no HP and needing focus to attack? Did you just watch the Backlogs video on Dark Souls 3 and this one got recommended after it? Well then, you'll enjoy seeing me struggle trying to beat this game with only summoned weapons. After a bad attempt at making my character look like Obi-Wan Kenobi, we can begin. We don't have a way to deal damage yet, so we can go to the south, just before the peninsula, where on a ruin we can find the Royal House Scroll, and now we only need an instructor so we can easily reach Sellen. Yeah, I forgot that there is a boss here. As I was saying, we can easily go around Stormveil Castle and reach the Church of Vows, where we meet Miriel, that is a better teacher anyway since he's a dog. By giving him the scroll, we can learn Carrion Slicer, our first summoned weapon. It's pretty good, because it attacks very fast, but as you can see, the first cast is quite slower, so we will usually want to use it after a roll, since it's faster that way. Now we can go to Kelid, because in the middle of the swamp we can find a staff that can't be upgraded, but scales really well in intelligence for the early game. And then, as the final upgrade we need, we can go in the Carrion Study Hall, where if we manage to survive all the phantom enemies and projectiles, we can get the Carrion Glintstone Staff, that improves the Carrion Sword sorceries, that are basically all summoned weapons. Also, along the way we got some runes, because even if we have the scroll, the spells aren't free. We can fight Margit, and as you can see we have two staves, because the Glintstone Staff improves summoned weapon damage even if it's in the offhand and we aren't actually using it. So we can have in the main hand the staff with the best scaling, that for now is the Meteorite Staff, and we don't even need to meet the requirements for the Carrion one to work. Our damage is great since we spent some time on our setup, and our attacks are really fast, but we need to manage our stamina well, since it will drain in a matter of seconds. Also, for now I equipped the Radagon Sword Seal because the additional HP makes up for the increase in damage taken and the stamina is useful. Margit falls once again, and instead of proceeding into the castle, since we already went to Liurnia, we might as well do the most efficient route. So we make our way into the academy, where after a couple of marionettes help us out with a Sonic the Hedgehog cosplay, we can fight the Red Wolf. I was scared by this area at first, because it's a magic school and all we do is magic damage, but thankfully the wolf isn't that resistant to it, so our damage is fine. And thanks to our fast attacks, we can easily get a couple of hits in every time we see an opening without being punished, and if we make a mistake we don't get one shot killed, so it's quite easy. I probably took too much risk at the end, but it worked out, so no problem. With the wolf gone, we can run around the corner to get on the upper floor and get an emblem that allows us to cast faster, an obvious inclusion to our build, but even if the wolf was easy, Renalla is on a whole different power scale, since she's very resistant to magic damage, meaning that we can leave her for later, and in the meantime we can explore Stormveil Castle. Nothing that we need here, but before fighting Godrick we can go back to Liurnia again to get the... Oh wow, it's not going to be fun, huh? 58 arrows and not many laughs later, we can reach the tree, that when killed drops a tear for the flask that increases magic damage for a couple of minutes. But turns out, we get one shot killed, and after that happened a couple of times I went back to Godrick. This fight is similar to the one with Margit, in that his attacks are pretty slow, and after a dodge we can get several hits in. So we need to manage our stamina well, or else we won't be able to dodge after the following attacks. And it's pretty important because if we get hit twice in a row, we die, since someone neglected leveling up vigor. Our damage is still good, but not insane, and the faster casting speed is probably useful, but honestly I couldn't really tell if it was actually working. But still, the fight isn't that hard since we have many openings to it. Or maybe at this point I made half a dozen videos on this game and I learned these attack patterns, who knows. In phase 2 he will start to spew fire around, but when that happens, if we manage to get close or behind him, we can just spam attacks, and eventually he will fall. With these souls we can finally level vigor, and now we can go back to the tree, since now we can withstand 2 whole hits, so it's not going to be a problem, unless we get hit twice. The tree finally falls, and now we basically have a 15% damage bonus in every boss fight, since we only deal magic damage and this thing lasts for 3 minutes. And I hope not many fights are going to last more than 3 minutes. With the excess souls we can buy the Carrion Greatsword, and these come in both blue and red. How cool. and even in grey if you actually press the button. Now I wanted to do Varre's questline, because since the latest patch it doesn't require being online, so I met with him a couple of times, went to the Plateau, found a summoning sign in a ruin to the west and invaded the NPC. Then we can meet up with Varre, he sends us to find a maiden, and after all that we can gain access to Mog's palace. Wait, how did he call him?
Mog yet
Mog? British people never change. Mog's palace is borderline broken, because here, if we get to the beginning of the area, we can find a bunch of Albinorics just sleeping it off, and each one of them will drop 2k runes. I won't farm them because I don't find it very fun to do in a challenge, but this is a crazy amount of runes for an early character. You can steamroll the game from here if you just farm for half an hour mindlessly. Getting back on track, we can traverse Kelid to get into Radhan's castle since we need a second great rune, and no way I'm fighting Renalla now. But after having the first skirmish with our rotting friend, I decided that I was probably too weak still, so I went to Sellia to get the Lusat staff. It's locked behind a boss fight, and these enemies can be dangerous, because they can dodge our swipes and then attack together, but I managed to stagger the first one to death, so no problem, and then I realized that the staff requires 52 in intelligence. So I did what every sane person would do, and I went to grind Radhan. I don't know why, maybe my level was too low, maybe the void stuff is not as good now and I need to upgrade one, or maybe I was just distracted, but I couldn't get past him. I kept on dealing some damage and then dying in phase 2, and it could be that I was playing too greedy because these attacks use a lot of stamina, but even after I did the shameful act of going and finding a decent armor, I kept dying on and on. So I took a break and went to the Caria Manor, where we can fight Loretta. I was expecting this to be very hard, because she uses magic and so I thought she had a huge magic resistance, but it wasn't actually that bad since fast melee attacks are always very useful against her. And with her defeat we get Loretta's Great Bow, that is clearly a summoned weapon since it not only fires a magic arrow, but it does it with a giant bow. That said, it doesn't get buffed by the Carian staff since it isn't technically a Carian sorcery. Here in the manor we can also find the Carian Piercer, and with these new tools we can face Radhan again, hopefully for the final time since we need to start the cutscene again and again every time we come back. The bow attack is quite slow and doesn't deal much damage unless we charge it, so we could run away and spam attacks, but it would take a very long time since we don't actually have many openings. And if we make one spacing mistake and we get hit by a strong attack, we are basically dead. So I decided to stick to the Slicer, that has a very high DPS and allows us to reliably roll through his attacks. The range is short, that's undeniable, but thankfully it's enough so that we can always hit him if we stay very close either in front or behind him. And that's useful, because we can avoid most of his attacks if we just stand there. There are many moments where he stands still and will charge up his blades or do some other shenanigans, and we want to do the bulk of our damage here, since if we stand behind him and have the right timing, we are able to be very greedy, dodge at the last possible frame, and he should take enough damage to put him into the next charging animation or phase, where we can attack again. Phase 2 is when he's really dangerous, since one misstep here and we die. But if we managed to damage him enough, we will just have to spam the Slicer as soon as he falls, then run away and finish him off with the Great Bow. So after way too many tries, some that hurt more than others, he falls. This will allow us to begin running his questline, but this time we want to also engage with Seluvis, because even if he's the least likable character in the game, getting to almost the end of his quest will help us out. So I cut it short, but we basically have to turn Nepheli into a doll, only doable after she gets depressed, and then we can get some spice in the plateau so that he can craft a stronger potion. We don't actually care about the potion, but if we get to here we will be awarded with the Magic Scorpion Charm, that grants us plus 12% sorcery damage, but we will take 10% more physical damage. Now Seluvis is useless again, if not for Glintblade Phalanx that technically summons weapons, so I think it's allowed, and we can go down the hall left by Radhan, where after meeting a tough opponent that kept saying hello there, we can face the Regal Ancestor. I was a bit afraid going into this, because it can heal for a lot as many times as it wants to, meaning that if it had a lot of magic resistance, this could have gone bad. Turns out that it could be be weak to magic for all I know, since we absolutely deleted it from existence without even giving it time to heal. In my defense, the arena is blue and that is enough for me to assume a boss is resistant to magic. We can now finally use the Lusat stuff, so we proceed in Ranni's quest where we can find a bunch of upgrade materials around. But we want to actually finish the quest because it will give us the strongest summoned weapon. So we talk to the doll and we have to fight the Baleful Shadow, that is maybe the strongest enemy we had to face so far, but we can take it down by using the bow from a distance and getting in with the slicer since it has a slight stagger. And apparently it has a grab attack, good to know. We proceed down, and at this point we can have the Lusat staff at +10, since we can find the final stone in Mohg's palace. So we can fight Astel. The Lusat staff works a bit weirdly, because it says that it makes all of our spells cost 50% more and deal increased damage, but it doesn't work super intuitively, because how it actually works is that it has a great sorcery scaling and spells cost more, so the only increased damage we have is through the sorcery scaling. Still, having more DPS at the cost of some focus is worth it for now, and we can use it to destroy Astel, that floats a bit above ground, meaning that sometimes the slicer will miss, but the attack speed is high enough that it's not a problem, and it made me sweat a bit at the end, but I took it down first try. Now, as soon as we defeat Renalla, we can go into a new area and get the cool summoned weapon, but that means we have to defeat Renalla, so instead I went to get into the capital, where if we sneak up on the Draconic Sentinel we can basically take him down before he can even attack. I mean, almost. We get into the city, where there's nothing we need to do, so we can go straight for Phantom Godfrey. The fight is really easy, our damage is great and we can even cast the slicer while we jump, so when he stomps the ground we basically get a free hit. It doesn't work with the other spells, but let's not kid ourselves, I would have probably only used the slicer either way. We get the last talisman pouch, where we can put one that improves sorcery damage by a bit, and then there's the Margit fight. When we enter the arena he will slowly walk towards us, so we get a free great bow shot, and then we want to stay close to him and use the slicer, since his attacks are way too fast for our other moves. We take a lot of damage, but we also deal a lot, so we can choose to trade hits sometimes, and when he tries to summon swords above our heads we can just dodge away and use the bow. When he goes into phase 2 there are explosions around and he takes less damage, but we still have a window where we can hit almost without consequences. If we didn't blow up while getting close, I mean. In phase 2 he's even faster and we can't cheese him out by running away and using the bow because he can dodge, but our DPS is so insanely high that if he makes one attack that is too long to charge, he dies. Now the time has come and I want to find out if I can beat Renalla. First we have to defeat the knight outside the arena, and he can parry that? The first try against Renalla went pretty well. Our damage sucks, but we can work with it and we don't take much from her. Since this is the first try, it means it didn't work out though, because I ran out of focus during phase 2, but then I came back with the other stuff that deals 100 damage per hit compared to 135, but it also consumes 50% less focus per hit. Phase 1 is really easy, we just have to poke some scholars and then her. And in phase 2, even if we don't deal much damage, we can keep her staggered for a long time every time we connect, so it's not that bad. The slicer is the most efficient spell we have, but this means no bow or other attacks with more range, so every time she summons someone to help her we have to run away and wait for it to decay. But for the wolves, that are usually weak enough that we can take them out just by attacking her. This means that it took a long time, having to always get in and out to deal damage, but in the second try I managed to defeat her. Now we can go to the Moonlight Altar, behind Astel's arena, where we just have to defeat a dragon to get one of the best summoned weapons in the game. Yeah, I guess I'll do it later, this is worse than Renalla. We have to do Fia's quest now, that involves defeating the gargoyles that we can thankfully hit easily with the slicer, and when that fails with our longer range spells, and then we have to fight their champions. There are a couple of casters among them, so I was a little afraid going into it, but we delete the first two waves and we can use the great sword during phase 3, that is very wide and allows us to hit all three of them at the same time while also staggering. We can now fight Fortissax, and I was very excited tempted to use Carrion Piercer to hit his head, but it works in some godforsaken strange way and my character misses every time I try to use it, probably because it's not meant to hit someone above us. It sucks, but I tried going back in with the Greatsword. This boss takes way more damage in the head than in the rest of the body, and that's why I'm so focused on trying to hit it, but it basically never lowers it enough so that we can get to hit it with the slicer. The Greatsword is fine, it often misses so we have to get a little lucky, but we only need like 7 hits to take him out. I also remembered that I have a bow towards the end of the fight, and that's probably what would have worked best from the beginning. We can now go into the Frozen Lands, and after getting to Castle Sol and remembering that this fight is probably going to be a nightmare, I decided that I need a Duelast Moonblade. It's a dragon, meaning that we deal roughly twice as much damage if we hit the head compared to the rest of the body, and since our damage is really low, we don't have enough focus if we don't go for the head. But the Slicer moveset isn't very kind to us, so we need to be positioned correctly, and still we will miss some hits. And it's called Devourer of Sorcerers, so that we know it's not going to be fun. Its moveset isn't that scary. The physical attacks are easy to recognize and slow, and if we stand under it, most of the time we will be able to dodge the Moonsword attack and the angled magic breathing one by walking a bit. This leaves 2 scary attacks though. In the first one it will summon a crystal that explodes into smaller ones that chase us, but it's also an amazing opportunity to deal damage, so we want to grid it out and dodge at the last second. And the other one is a jump back with a forward breath that I am honestly not sure how to dodge and got hit by it most of the time. Also, forget the horse in this fight. Being that high up is too risky, and because of how casting on horseback works, we can only attack to the right. The fight lasted a lot, and towards the end I had to switch to the other stuff because I didn't have enough focus, and I think it was a good call, because I managed to take out the dragon with my literal last possible cast. I had no more flasks or resources. Also, if it goes too far away, it will teleport back in front of the church and lose the aggro, might be able to cheese it that way. With that, we get a Duelast Moonblade, a summoned weapon that attacks at a slight angle, but that, most importantly, deals frost damage both on the blade and on the projectile that it shoots out. We need it in Castle Sol, because this way we can take out one of the knights as the fight begins and damage the other one and the boss. If we give them even a couple more seconds, we risk too much. After the knight's fall, the boss goes into phase 2, and here I got lucky because he did his strongest attack, that if you manage to dodge, has a comically long recover time where you can just go nuts. These were like 10 free hits, and just because I ran out of stamina. He has a couple of dash attacks, but he basically never uses them if you don't engage first, so we can just walk away from him, use the great bow, dodge his retaliating attack, get some more free hits and run away with the bow. Rinse and repeat until we defeat him. And just like that, a very scary fight goes down first try. In the secret lands behind this boss fight we can find a rise that has a talisman that greatly improves sorcery damage. To enter, you need to solve a puzzle that involves either summoning your fanged imps and having them kill an imp you find around, or you can charm one, but both these things deal damage and aren't sorcery, so we can't use them. Except this isn't actually completely true. If you summon your imps and then you kill one yourself, the door will open, and as you can see, my imp got close to it, but dealt no damage. And for that I have to thank a viewer that wrote a comment about it. I honestly had no idea it worked like that. Then we can enter the Helix where we have to fight Flash Loretta, but as always she wasn't harder than the first encounter. She improved as much as we did, but she's still weak to fast attacks, so we can easily take her out, and doing that we get Loretta's Mastery. That is Loretta's great bow, but with more arrows, and that costs an ungodly amount of focus. It's Fire Giant time, and our damage here is so good that we don't even care if we are properly hitting the ankle, we just spam it. If we get hit, we probably die on the spot, but let's not think too much about that. We don't have any way to deal bleed damage though, so we want to properly exploit his weak spots. When phase 2 begins, he will put his body down and cast a spell, and if we run under him and use a Duelast Moonblade, we can get 3 clean hits on his head, and all of them will connect with both the blade and the projectile. After that, he should be almost dead, since he even damages himself while going into phase 2, and I found facing him head on a bit too risky, so I simply went for some attacks at the rest of his body. He is obviously very resistant there, but our damage output is still fine and he falls. Malenia tells us what her favorite moment from Star Wars Episode 3 is, and we have to fight the hardest boss so far, the Goldskin Dude. I can't even finish saying the tagline and I'm already dead, I hate them so much. I tried 1,000 strategies here and died 1,000,000 times, because our main problem is that we can't deal sleep damage, since it comes from a torch, greases and pots that deal 1 damage when they connect. It's not like we don't have enough DPS to take them out, or that we need too much focus, but our attacks either come out too slow or have too short of a range. On top of that, we take way too much damage if we get hit, and the tall one even has a move with invincibility frames. That said, if we manage to take one of them out without being completely out of heals, we can deal enough damage in a short time to always be in a 1v1 scenario. The bow is out of the equation, because the damage to focus ratio isn't there and we often get punished by a fireball when we try to use it. So at first I decided to space them out properly, get in only when I'm sure I have an opening and not fight them when they are too close together. But this strategy was inherently flawed, because it came from the perspective of someone trying to play a normal boss fight, but there is a big difference between this fight and most others. The only hard part is the beginning, when we are forced in a 2 vs 1, and after that it's smooth sailing. So the way I actually have to fight is absolutely balls to the wall, all in tactics, because if I get lucky and don't get comboed too hard, the first one will fall in a matter of seconds, and then the 1v1 is basically bullying. Obviously, fighting that recklessly means that I will die a lot, but it doesn't really matter, because 15 seconds later I am in the fight again, and as an historic quote goes, I only have to be lucky once, they need to be lucky every time. Maybe don't Google who said that. And as I said, when we are in a 1v1, between their lengthy summoning the other guy and going into phase 2 animations, the fight is free. Up next is Dragonlord Placidusax, and I wasn't too worried going into this, because since we use magic, we deal about the same damage if we hit them in the necks or in the tail, and the necks are technically a weak point, but if we stay in front of them we risk much more, whereas they don't really have attacks that can reach us if we stand behind them. The only thing that can go badly here is getting killed in one hit, but at this point we managed to level vigor enough that even with the light armor and the talisman that increases the damage we take, we can pretty much survive all their attacks aside from the laser. But the laser is almost always a one-shot kill, so you have to dodge it either way. I want to mention that we could have used the Moonblade aimed high, so that it connects with both their body and necks, but they are really resistant to frost, so it's probably not worth it. We use it a bit in the next fight though, because during Maliketh phase 1 he uses a lot of projectiles, but if we manage to dodge under him we can freely hit. When phase 2 begins he will always jump at us in some way, so we need to be ready to dodge that attack and then get in with the slicer, because he's notoriously fast, making this probably the best opening in all the fight. Then it's all a matter of remembering to roll towards him to dodge melee attacks, as you always get punished, and that when he jumps he can't punish us right away if we miss an attack, so it makes sense to spam a bit. We will mostly hit nothing with the last one, but sometimes it connects with him and it's free. And we even take him down with the BM weapon unequip spam at the end. That was obviously intentional and it wasn't me mashing buttons on accident because I was scared for my life. Then we have to fight Gideon, and his speech after the fight lasted more than the actual fight. You were my brother, Gideon. Moog is next, and this fight shows how insane our DPS is. During phase 1 he will count down at certain damage thresholds, and while doing that he swipes with his weapon. But if we just stand to his left and spam attacks when he begins to count, we deal so much damage that he won't do anything else and simply count down and go into phase 2, meaning that we basically have to dodge 2 attacks at the beginning and that's it. But if we deal a bit less damage and get lucky, he will do an attack sequence before counting for the last time, meaning that we can get even more damage in before phase 2. Then he will obviously heal, but we can still attack while he transforms, and as you can see, he has maybe a sixth of his total HP when he does his first attack. A couple more swipes and he's there. I hate this pigeon, man. Now only 4 bosses remain. Too bad one of them is a serpent thing swimming in a lava pool, and for some reason I decided that I won't use the gimmick weapon with gimmick attacks needed to kill the gimmick serpent in the gimmick boss fight. So I spent close to a couple of hours trying to defeat him and decided that I wanted a break and went to stab Godfrey a bit. Now, this fight is easy, since his main form of disengage is dashing away and stomping the ground, but with the slicer we can do a jump attack, so every time he tries to flee, he gets it for free at least a couple of times. Our attacks are quite fast, so we can dodge reliably, but most importantly, in both phases he can decide to charge up, and if he does that when we are close, we can deal so much damage that basically the phase or the fight is over. I'm starting to think that maybe the slicer is a bit too good. Back to the serpent grind, and now that I said it, it sounds so bad. I want to talk about this fight, and just so we are clear, it's not fun, cool and or dandy, but it took me like a day to do it, so you will listen, and maybe like the video because of it, haha. I mean, you could just skip to the cooler Malenia fight, but that would be a bit rude. Not really. Phase 1, we just run up to it and attack. We can get 2 hits in before being staggered by the lava, no matter our casting speed, so I switched out Radagon's icon for a talisman that regenerates some HP over time, and we just spam attacks and roll when he rotates. He can decide to slither away, and if he starts to do it, he will probably do it for the rest of the fight, but in that case, no worries, we have to run and jump attack to hit his face. If he doesn't, it's better, but we don't get to choose. And notice that I didn't use the Physic Flask yet. Also, he's stunned towards the end, but we just keep attacking. Phase 2 is the real problem. What we want to do is get close to either one of his legs, drink the flask that has not only the usual damage increase, but also will give us infinite focus for 12 seconds, and then we want to spam the Moonblade. Again, we will hit once and then get staggered, but we should freeze him. I don't know why, but the Sorry, small intermission. No, it's not a sponsor thing. I was editing the video, and apparently I kept on talking about this fight for 5 more minutes, and it was the worst thing I ever produced. So let me make a summary. Snake bad, Frost good. If you're playing along, just skip the fight. And I guess this is why you shouldn't write a script right after the frustrating boss. Malenia is our palate cleanser after Rykard, and I went in thinking it was going to be quite easy, since the slicer has good damage and is really fast. And then I realized that Adula's Moonblade doesn't freeze her in one hit, so we have to find a way to deal with their waterfowl dance. But Varre's questline is not the only thing that changed in patch 1.06, and this little line of text comes to our aid. We just have to strip down and then we can dodge the dance, like that. I guess we have to be Malenia in order to beat Malenia. The joke makes more sense in phase 2. Also, the helm gives me +3 intelligence, so the banana hat stays on during the fight. And now it's a normal Malenia fight. Sure, we have the scorpion ring, so our defenses are in the negative, but we won't get one shot killed and we can always run away to heal. This slicer is fast enough that we can actually interrupt her when she tries to hit us, because even the smallest damage will stagger her when she doesn't have hyper armor. And often when that happens, she does the double dash backwards that we can chase and punish with a jump attack. First time that someone said that sentence outside of a fighting game. We want to basically always attack twice, because sometimes she will stand still after getting hit, so it's free damage, and other times she will dash around us to try and retaliate, but we have enough time to dodge her swing. We could attack once and then react to what she does to not waste focus, but it requires a lot of brain power to do consistently, and we have plenty of focus to spare, not to mention we can safely drink if we run away. She survived phase 1 with basically no HP, and now that phase 2 begins, all is the same, only that we can do a lot of free damage when she goes into a cocoon. Hilariously, the new lightweight roll is so long that we can avoid the first part of the dance, but it's harder to dodge the second and third part, because we will often end up getting hit by the hitbox behind their second wave and completely inside the third wave. So to dodge does the latter, we have to wait for her to dash past us and then roll. This fight is probably what kids imagine is happening when they hear their parents fighting alone in bed at night. She isn't the only one that can luck out and survive with no HP though, and we only need one more opening to take her out. I won't lie, my heartbeat was probably close to 200 at this point. Remember that the only health point that matters is the last one, or the last 15 in this case, and we can go and face the final boss, Radagon and Big Fish, this time with clothes on. They aren't even close to the challenge the last two boss fights were. Radagon is way too slow to be a threat. We can sneak 2 or 3 attacks in every time he swings and he falls in a matter of seconds. And while the fish is definitely tankier, our DPS is still really good, and we only have to dodge a couple of attacks before taking it out. And with that I'll say that you can beat Elden Ring with only summoned weapons. And if you like the video, leave a like or even subscribe. I'll see you next time. Well, you'll see me. See the video at least. Why do I always mess up the outro? Stop! Hammer time!